Chapter 24:01 The Confusion in My Heart 1. Zhang Yi stopped in his tracks, his gaze sharpening. The next moment, several familiar figures emerged from the black mist. King Arthur, clad in silver armor and wielding the Sword of Kings, exudes an aura of royalty. Behind them followed the Knights of the Round Table, who looked as if they had just returned from a great battle. Beside the Knights of the Round Table, Saladin stood tall and aloof, seemingly blending into the shadows, with the remnants of the Shadow Fiend Legion silently following behind him. King Arthur and his group caught up with Zhang Yi and his companions. Since Zhang Yi had cleared the obstacles ahead, they did not encounter any trouble on their way. Chaos, we're here. Just as you predicted, those guys from the Vatican are plotting something in the shadows. King Arthur said this to Zhang Yi. He glanced at Morgan in Columbia and nodded slightly as a greeting. Morgan looked at Zhang Yi, then at King Arthur and Saladin, and he knew perfectly well what had happened. So, you've joined the Pupil Organization too? Well, you did have a falling out with the Vatican, I understand. Morgan said calmly. Seeing their appearance, Zhang Yi asked, where did those guys from the Vatican go? Did they run away? Saladin said to Zhang Yi, Father Orion and Sister Leibniz have already left Dark Sun Forest with their men. Saladin's eyes were cold as he added in a low voice, their purpose is certainly related to the Vatican's conspiracy. But what they really want, we do not yet know. The conversation shifted abruptly, and the two of them looked at Zhang Yi. Chaos. King Arthur spoke, his tone tentative. What exactly happened? What are those people in the papacy planning? This forest seems more dangerous than we anticipated. Zhang Yi shrugged. I used someone's ability to see a possible future. In that possibility, the Vatican would betray us and side with the Lunarians. That's why I had you keep an eye on them. What? Everyone present couldn't help but show expressions of surprise. Switch allegiance to the Lunarians? To the papacy? What's the point of them doing this? Furthermore, why are the Lunarians only making their move against us now? With their power, it should be easy for them to harm us if they really wanted to. Morgan and the others were completely baffled, and even the people in the shadow space were puzzled. Only Zhang Yi and Yang Xinxi knew about the whole thing from beginning to end. Even Zhou Kuo and Uncle Yu didn't know. Zhang Yi said, as I said, this is only a possibility. It's precisely because I wasn't certain that I didn't tell you before.
But now.
Zhang Yi looked at the corpse of Daolon, whom he had killed, on the ground, and said with a deep gaze, I can confirm it now. Morgan, King Arthur, and the others were deeply shocked. They couldn't imagine how they would survive and complete their mission if both of the two Lunarian empires attacked them. You don't need to worry too much. It's true that the Lunarians are the ones who want to kill us. But it seems that it's only a small part of them. This matter is very likely related to the death of the 7th Black Moon Priest of the Dark Moon Empire. Zhang Yi rested his chin on his hand and pondered for a moment, then looked at Yang Xinxin. Xian, do you understand? Zhang Yi has never liked to do things that require thinking. Yang Xinxin nodded slowly. The pieces of information have been gathered, and I can roughly figure out the truth of the matter. Everyone turned their curious gazes toward Yang Xinxin, wanting to hear how Zhang Yi's strategist viewed the issue. Yang Xinxin said slowly, if we eliminate all possibilities of error, then the remaining possibilities, no matter how incredible they may seem, are all correct results. Have you considered that perhaps some of the moon people are the ones who caused the loss of the spark? Zhang Yi also had a vague suspicion of this. He said, you mean there are traitors among the Lunarians? They abandoned their ancestors' suppression of Samel and instead chose to let him break the seal. Yang Xinxin nodded. That's right. That's exactly what I mean. Saladin said in a deep voice with suspicion. But what's the point of them doing this? Once Samel breaks the seal, according to ancient history, they will indiscriminately devour everything in the material world. In that case, the first to perish will be the Lunarians themselves. Aren't they just courting death by doing this? Yang Xinxin smiled faintly. Yes, they knew they would die, but they still chose to do it. So, I guess that's what you call faith. Yang Xinshin carefully analyzed the matter for everyone. First, from the very beginning, the disappearance of the meteorite spark was shrouded in mystery. Such an important figure was revered as a sacred object by the entire Shining Moon Empire. How could it be possible to let a shadow warrior take her away so easily? It would be absolutely impossible for this to happen without someone pulling the strings behind the scenes. Secondly, after they arrived on the moon, the Black Moon Priestess, Eclipse Yen, died the very next day. How could things be such a coincidence? Third, Daolan's attack on Zhang Yi and the appearance of the shadow assassin. Fourth, the Vatican's unusual actions. If Zhang Yi's strength hadn't exceeded their expectations, any other bishop-level superhuman on Earth would have been doomed. Yang Xinshin said, "In conclusion, I believe that a force has emerged among the Lunarians. Their goal is to revive Samuel. And the Vatican must have contacted them beforehand. Father Orion and Sister Leibniz, from the very beginning, their purpose in coming to the moon was not to reinforce the seal of Samuel with us. As for why they did this," she shrugged. "Who knows what the reason might be? Maybe they're just fanatically worshipping Samuel, willing to die for him, just like those fanatics in the papacy." Morgan still didn't understand. It's one thing for the Lunarians to go mad, but what's the point of the Holy See doing this? Their foundation is still on Earth. Yang Xinshin shook her head. "I don't know about this matter. I'll probably have to ask them myself." An eerie silence fell over the scene. Yang Xinshin's analysis was logical and reasonable, and indeed the most realistic possibility. But their emotions are hard to accept. How could anyone possibly try to sabotage themselves by releasing a demon that would destroy their entire race? In short, there's no use thinking about these things now. The more they try to stop us from finding the spark and strengthening the seal, the more we need to do it. Yang Xinshin looked at everyone and said calmly, Chapter 24:02 The Confusion in My Heart, 2. Saladin's eyes darkened, while King Arthur fell silent. Zhang Yi continued, "There's no need to worry. The most urgent task is not to dwell on those pointless questions, but to find the spark, strengthen Samuel's seal, and prevent the moon from completely collapsing." As soon as he finished speaking, everyone was shocked. The moon collapsed. That was an apocalyptic scene that no one dared to imagine. Morgan gritted his teeth, then suddenly looked up, his tone hesitant. If that's really the case, then all our battles have just been a prelude. Zhang Yi nodded, then turned and continued walking deeper into the forest. However, at that moment, a sudden change occurred. Several members of the Knights of the Round Table suddenly clutched their heads and howled in pain, their bodies convulsing violently. Their eyes became bloodshot, their pupils gradually turned black, and strange cracks appeared on their skin. "What's going on?" someone exclaimed. Mental pollution." Morgan's expression changed drastically. Sure enough, the knights soon began to roar, their eyes empty and ferocious, their limbs gradually twisting, and their armor and flesh began to merge, transforming into some kind of deformed monster. An extremely oppressive atmosphere spread out, as if the entire forest was whispering, trying to drag everyone into madness. King Arthur's expression turned solemn, and he suddenly took out an ancient conch shell horn. He took a deep breath and suddenly blew the whistle. Wah! The deep, resonant sound of the horn echoed, carrying a rhythm otherworldly melody. That was the symphony of the sea god, the tranquility and order of the deep sea spreading through the air. The conch shell horn is a sacred object that can seal off space and calm the sea. It also possesses the power to soothe the soul. The distant sound of horns reached the ears of the knights, and their previously crazed pupils gradually regained their clarity, the hideous cracks slowly receding. The atmosphere of spiritual pollution was suppressed, and their minds returned to tranquility. The dark whispers in the air gradually dissipated with the music, as if the deep-sea tide was swallowing up all the chaos. The knights were in disarray, but they eventually regained their senses. They knelt on one knee, sweat pouring down their foreheads. King Arthur put away his horn, his expression grave, and said, "Indeed, the pollution of the Dark Sun Forest is worsening. If it weren't for the conch horn, we might have been corrupted as well. Saladin's eyes were cold and sharp as he murmured, "This forest hides a darkness deeper than we imagined. We must act quickly." Zhang Yi, carrying his great sword, turned around, his gaze piercing through the thick fog ahead. His voice was cold and firm, like an echo from the distant future. "Time is running out. We must find the spark as soon as possible and not give those conspirators a chance." With the help of Zhou Kuo and Yang Xia, Zhang Yi has recovered. Without the slightest hesitation, he absorbed the 3 portions of Black Bishop-level primordial power in one go. A rich and powerful source of energy entered his brow, and the feeling of his head being almost burst by the force made Zhang Yi's head ache, as if it were being torn apart. Absorbing too much energy in a short period of time can indeed be overwhelming for the body. After all, he needs to accept not only power, but also digest all the negative elements in the origin of the superhuman, cleanse them of their impurities, and transform them into his own. Fortunately, the pain was only temporary, and I soon felt better. Zhang Yi could sense that once he returned to Earth, it wouldn't be long before he could officially break through to the night level. Finally, he was able to compete with those powerful ancient civilizations. Even without relying on external aids, his own power alone is enough to fight against multiple powerful races. Although it is difficult to shake the 2 great empires of the Lunarians or the Qinling Dragon Clan, which are transcendent beings. But he will never again be completely powerless to resist those forces. The more powerful I become, the deeper my awe for those ancient beings grows. In this world, there are countless mysterious and powerful races that have not revealed themselves due to Kagago's rules. Zhang Yi clenched his fist, a resolute look shining in his eyes. Continue to grow stronger and uncover more of this world's mysteries. I will lead everyone to survive the true calamity. The group continued on their journey, chasing after burning bones and fleeting meteor. Brian sneezed, then tried his best to use his dog nose to find his way. Deep within the dark sun forest, it seemed to be the end of the world. The further you go in, the thicker the fog becomes, as if even your soul is being swallowed up by the darkness. The sky here is no longer pitch black, but swirling with eerie purple bands of light, like an eternal aurora, yet exuding endless chill and oppression. In this valley shrouded in darkness, it was so silent that even the wind could not be heard. Everything seemed to be imprisoned outside of time, with only the sound of footsteps echoing in the valley. 2 figures appeared in the darkness. It was Shunliuxing and Fenggu, who slowly walked into the valley. They were slender, yet possessed an unwavering determination. The long journey and bloody battles had left both of them covered in wounds. However, at this moment, a certain unwavering flame burned in Fenggu's eyes. Shunliuxing closed her eyes, letting him pull her hand forward. She placed complete trust in Fenggu. Before me lay a chaotic and bewildering boundary, like the gates of the underworld, where illusory dark light and shadow twisted into enormous vortexes, emanating a strong sense of warning. This is the heart of the dark sun forest. We've arrived. Fenggu took Shunliuxing's hand and looked at her, speaking in a deep voice. We will soon meet the Night Witch, who can break the spell the Silver Moon Guardian cast on you and restore your sight. Shunliuxing's voice became excited. Really? That means I can see clearly what this world is really like. Fenggu nodded, his voice gentler than ever before. Once your eyes are healed, we can go to many places. We can see the world. His voice suddenly became hesitant, and his right hand unconsciously tightened its grip on the meteor. Because he knew very well that the people of both the Radiant Moon Empire and the Dark Moon Empire were searching for them all over the moon. Even though the meteor regained its light, it could never leave the dark sun forest again. He didn't tell Shunliuxing the truth, but instead led her slowly toward the enormous door formed by the dark vortex. In an instant, they crossed the boundary of chaos and confusion and arrived at a completely new place. Everything that was before has disappeared. The world fell silent. Fenggu opened his eyes wide, staring at everything before him, almost unable to believe his eyes. This is what the place where the night which lives looks like. Chapter 24:03 The Confusion in My Heart 3. Shunliuxing followed Fenggu through the mysterious door, and as the light and shadows shifted before their eyes, Fenggu's eyes widened in disbelief when he finally saw everything clearly. What he saw before him was a sight he had never seen in nearly 100 years of living on the moon. The radiant moon empire is always filled with a silvery white glow, which, although dazzling at first glance, can become blinding over time. The dark moon empire has always been shrouded in an eternal gloom and mist, mysterious and oppressive. But the valley before us is quiet and secluded, with many beautiful flowers, grasses and trees growing there, and those plants are dotted with specks of purple light. In the center of the valley, a huge black laurel tree grows. The tree canopy blocked out the sun, and each leaf was as crystalline as obsidian, reflecting a cold, eerie light. Burning Bones' gaze was fixed ahead when he suddenly saw a swing made of vines hanging below the laurel tree. On the swing sat a woman dressed in a black and purple robe, her face completely hidden in the darkness. Her body was surrounded by boundless shadows, and a waning black moon floated behind her. The light of the dark moon spilled into the valley, like a chilling tide, making it too dangerous to look directly at. Her face was covered by a black veil, with only her deep eyes clearly visible, as if they could see through the root of fate. It is none other than the ruler of the Dark Sun Forest, the Night Witch. The moment Fenggu saw her, his pupils dilated violently, his knees buckled, and he collapsed to his knees. "Grandmother." His voice was hoarse, but full of excitement and longing. The word grandmother reveals the relationship between Burning Bones and the Night Witch. They were actually blood relatives. No wonder Fenggu dared to enter this forbidden place without being corrupted by his spirit. Seeing Burning Bones kneeling on the ground and the girl in white beside him, the mysterious and powerful Night Witch lowered her head and observed the two of them for a long time. "You are Night Soulson? Has so much time passed? You've grown so much." When the Witch of the Night disappeared, her son was still a minor. Unexpectedly, she has now met her grandson. Fate is truly unpredictable. She thought she had severed all ties with the outside world. However, the fact that Fenggu came to find her meant that something very troublesome had happened. The Night Witch lowered her head in thought. Lately, the dark aura in the Dark Sun Forest had become even denser. She should have realized what was happening long ago. "How did you end up here?" She stared at Fenggu, glancing at Shun Liuxing out of the corner of her eye. "And why did you bring the flame of the Radiant Moon Empire? The people outside must be going crazy with worry if they lose her." She had already guessed the reason for the changes in the Dark Sun Forest. On the moon, there are two great empires, with the Radiant Moon Empire always holding a higher position than the Dark Moon Empire. Because the Dark Moon Empire is a descendant of Samel, who created it and is a traitor. The people of the Radiant Moon Empire are the ones who have truly maintained the seal all along. If it weren't for their continuous supply of fire, any mishap to Samel's seal would have led to the annihilation of the Dark Moon Empire. The Dark Moon Empire, which is adjacent to the Abyss of Origin, will perish before the Radiant Moon Empire. Burning Bones slammed his head against the ground and shouted, "Please, save her." Shunliuxing paused for a moment, then looked up at Fenggu, a look of astonishment flashing in his eyes. She never expected that this taciturn yet incredibly stubborn man was actually the grandson of the terrifying being before her. The Night Witch slowly opened her eyes. Her gaze fell on Fenggu, devoid of any tenderness, only a profound and utterly cold indifference. "Burning Bones, my good child, you have finally come this far." The voice was deep, yet it echoed in every corner of the valley. It was as if the heavens and earth themselves were speaking to him. She swayed on the swing, her face obscured, but her eyes seemed to see through everything in the world. 1,000 years ago, she was the first Black Moon priestess of the Dark Moon Empire. 1,000 years later, no one knows what level of strength she has reached. It may become stronger, or it may become weaker. Even the frail first Black Moon priest possessed the terrifying power to cause the entire moon to fall. Fungu gritted his teeth and slammed his forehead against the cold ground. Grandmother. She is the spark. She bears the heavy burden of destiny, but she has already sacrificed too much. Why is she destined to face a hopeless, dead end from birth? Why can't she live like a normal Lunarian and enjoy the beauty of life? Please help her. Save her life. The Night Witch was silent for a moment, then suddenly sighed softly. Fate is irreversible. The destiny of the spark is to burn itself to illuminate the sky. Anyone who tries to defy fate will ultimately face tragedy. Her words, like a merciless judgment, echoed for a long time in the valley. Shumliuxing stood there blankly, her fingertips trembling slightly. She sensed the sincere plea of burning bones, but also sensed the scent of death in the Night Witch's words. No! Fungu suddenly raised his head, his eyes revealing a crazed stubbornness. I don't believe in fate. Even a spark deserves its own future. Grandmother, I beg you, grant us your wish. The Night Witch gazed at him, her eyes as deep and unfathomable as an abyss. The air was deathly silent. Shumliuxing couldn't see anything, and could only stand there blankly. Burning Bones' heart pounded rapidly. He had no idea whether this grandmother, whom he had only heard about since birth, would actually help them. However, the Night Witch was their only way out. He had to give it a try. The Night Witch sat slowly on the swing, swaying gently, her eyes fixed on the two people in front of her. After a long while, she slowly stretched out a hand. Her fingers were slender and fair, yet they shimmered with an eerie black light. Since you insist on this, then I will witness your decision. I can give her light, but no one knows where her fate will lead. As the Night Witch finished speaking, the black moon above the valley suddenly trembled. Countless beams of dark moonlight poured down, like the tide of night, enveloping the entire valley. This radiance was less light than a dark liquid, flowing slowly through the void. Under the dark moonlight, Shumliuxing's figure trembled slightly. Her eyes should have been closed forever, bound by an invisible technique. However, at this moment, as the moonlight covered her, her eyelashes trembled slightly, and the binding runes at the corners of her eyes gradually crumbled. Snap! It was as if the sound of shackles being broken echoed in my heart. The next moment, Shumliuxing slowly opened his eyes. Her pupils were clear and bright, like the rising morning star. Light returned to her world. Dear viewers, thanks for staying with me. We'll try to get you more updates. Please like and subscribe and share the video with your friends. Love you all.